But I think that with our current fitness standards, you've got to choose. You're either going lean, so you look impressive because you're shredded, or you go huge. So that if you get lean, yes, you do look smaller in clothes, but at least, in one situation, you truly excel. You look awesome with the shirt off.
All right, so I want to kick things off around your video on looking great as an intermediate lifter. My understanding is you believe that getting lean should be a priority due to the following two factors. Most lifters cannot or are unwilling to put in the work required to build and maintain muscle beyond the intermediate level. And low body fat can make you look amazing, even with just an intermediate level of muscle development. Can you talk through your thinking in as much detail as possible?
Yes. By the way, thank you, Varun, for having me back on the podcast. I am honored to have been the first guest. It's great. And I've seen your growth. It's awesome. I appreciate everyone who listens to your podcast. So let's get to your question. I really do think that most lifters, most serious lifters, I would say, get stuck in the intermediate range for whatever reasons. Maybe they're not gifted genetically. That's a subset of lifters. They find it hard to progress past that intermediate stage. Or maybe they are very susceptible to injuries. So whenever they get to lifting big weights, they suffer tendinitis or they get a micro injury in one of their joints that has to heal for a few months. And then you just go up and down to the intermediate stage. You build momentum, you build strength, you build muscle for a while. Then something happens, either an injury or you get a life event, a disruptive life event. You don't lift for a while, or maybe you train less consistently, or you don't pay attention to nutrition that much. So you essentially go up and down through the intermediate stage. This has been what I have observed with my audience and also with people I interact in real life in the gym. Very, very few people I see, at least here in Romania, there are very few really advanced people in the gym. I'm sure that if I was to go in North America to one of those huge gyms, one of those destination gyms, I would see a lot of giants over there. But, in a regular gym, in a normal neighborhood, you don't really see really advanced people. And I assume that is the vast majority of the audience that the fitness community wants to reach. As a fitness content creator, depending on your target audience, I assume that you're talking to a lot of people that, the regular gym goers. And the reality is that most of them are not going to build a lot of muscle. They're not going to get to near their genetic potential. So in my view, the only chance those lifters have to look amazing is to get lean. So you build an intermediate level of muscle development, and then you get to maybe between 10 and 15% body fat, and you get muscle definition, and suddenly you look great at the gym. You look great whenever you have to take your shirt off. So I think that is actually the goal physique for a lot of people, and that is my philosophy right now.
So I know that's your philosophy right now. So there's a bunch of follow-up questions here. So the first was that you'll look great without a shirt. But I think a challenge is in an Instagram world, I think that's accurate, but the vast majority of us are in clothes, at least a t-shirt, right? So I think something that I think about is like optimizing for like t-shirt and jeans or t-shirt and shorts as opposed to shirtless, because I'm shirtless like, I don't know, 3 times a year. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think if you're optimizing for that leanness at an intermediate level, do you think that you look, I guess, impressive compared to general population in clothes?
No, in clothes you probably look pretty normal. Yeah, that is a downside. But in my view, even if you carry 5 kilograms of extra fat on you, it's not going to make a big difference, even in clothes. So I do think that the trade-off isn't worth it. Now, I know that some people do like to maybe fill out a t-shirt or, look huge when they have a sweater on. But even like that, at the intermediate level, you're not going to look huge even at 20% body fat. You're going to look slightly bigger. But I do think that if you get lean, yes, you do look smaller in clothes, but at least, in one situation you truly excel. You look awesome with the shirt off. And I guess it also comes down to preferences. Now, in my view, I think that I'm no longer the type of person that posts shirtless pictures of myself on Instagram, or I don't even look in the mirror that much anymore. But still, it seems to me like if you go to the gym this much, at least when you want to see your muscles, you take your shirt off, and that's how you assess progress. And the 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 aesthetics of my physique has always been the yardstick, I guess, for myself. Even if I
Yeah.
don't show it to other people, it's just, if I go to the gym and I put in this much effort, I want it to show at least in some way. And I find that being lean is the best way to do that.
So maybe we can be more specific on intermediate, because I feel the challenge with intermediate is it's such a broad range, right? So like you're a beginner for like 6 months or a year, and then you could be an intermediate for 8 years, right? Like
Yeah.
intermediate is a long journey. So are you suggesting this for like early intermediates or kind of that late intermediate who keeps getting stuck, or everyone in
Yeah,
between? 'Cause there is a difference, right? If you're like a
yeah.
mid or late intermediate, you probably will look impressive compared to general population in clothes, right? You're not going to look huge. You're not going to look like a bodybuilder. But if you're an early intermediate, you're going to pretty much look like a beginner. So do you feel like there's a difference in those ranges there?
Yes, exactly. I think I'm talking mostly to late intermediates,
Okay.
people that have been training for years continuously. Because yes, getting lean when you're maybe in your first year of lifting, or even in your second, you're gonna look very small, and it's generally not a good idea. That being said, um, if you look at Hollywood movies, whenever they show actors, they want to show that they're big and strong or muscular, they get them very lean, and they do that even with people that don't have a lot of muscle mass. For example, maybe last year or a year before, I forget, the new Top Gun movie launched, and everybody went crazy for that. What they were playing, football scene on the
Volleyball.
beach.
The volleyball scene on the beach.
Yeah, I think in the second one they were playing football, right? Yeah,
I
the
don't know. I
first
don't
one
remember.
was
Okay.
volleyball. Yeah, in the second one they were playing football. And if you look at those actors, they look amazing, because yeah, of course they oiled up. There's the sunset,
Angles and the lighting too, right?
the
Yeah, it's
lighting.
everything.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
lighting is great. But those people don't have a lot of muscle mass. Those actors are really, maybe the amount of muscle that you can build in your first year of lifting. And yet, when they're lean, they just look amazing. So if an early intermediate is aiming for that sort of physique, even for a summer, I think, hey, no problem.
For sure.
Do a cut, enjoy that sort of look for 3 months or something like that. But it's not something that you want to maintain, because if you want to build more muscle, you probably have to do bulks.
Yeah, well, I think being lean, right, has some advantages in that you're more vascular, your facial aesthetics are a little bit better. So I know when I was much leaner, but I had less muscle mass, like I probably got more compliments by random people or people asking questions about lifting because my arms look more vascular, whatever it might be, right? It's just there's that appearance that you're bigger, even if you're not.
Exactly.
All right. So I do want to touch on this piece where you talk about intermediates getting stuck or getting injured. Can you maybe talk about your experience with that? Like, is that something that you went through? And
Oh,
so maybe talk through that, and if you figured out any tips to solve it, or if it's just something that kind of kept happening to you at that kind of mid or late intermediate stage.
I'm still experimenting, but so my lifting journey is that I have always enjoyed lifting heavy, and I respond best to a low rep range. You know that you see in research that sometimes um, people very respond differently to different training methods. Sometimes when you switch low responders from, say, a low volume program and you put them on a higher volume program, they respond a little bit better, or the other way around. So there is some genetic variability in terms of what works best for you. Now, in my case, it has always been uh, low rep range, 4 to 6. In the 4 to 6 rep range, it's amazing for me. But the problem is that when I train for a long time with heavy weights, I tend to run into some joint pain eventually, either in my shoulders or my knees, or actually the shoulder and knees are probably the only ones that bother me. I've never had problems with with my elbows or other joints, but if your shoulders start hurting, then you just can't do almost anything. You can bench press. It bothers you even when you train your back. It bothers you sometimes even when you train arms. So for years, my struggle was that I was training in my preferred way for a few months. I was making great gains, but then I would run into some sort of joint pain, and then would have to step back, would have to take it easier for a few months, and I would lose a lot of the progress I made up to that point, and also would lose some of the momentum and motivation I had.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, in order to solve this, I've modified my training style in a way that I enjoy it much less than before, but um, I'm hoping it's more sustainable. So for the past few years, I've trained mostly in a higher rep range, uh, at least 10 reps per set, even for the exercises that I really enjoy training heavy. And I included much more machine training than before. When I was just starting out, I was a barbell purist. I really liked to train only with free weights. But over the years, in order to minimize the risk of injuries, I try to include more machines, more more isolation exercises, higher rep ranges, and it does seem to work so far. At least in terms of muscle development, I look good. I look uh, okay, but I miss the training where you focus on making strength gains. That's my favorite style.
Yeah, I think that is interesting because I was kind of thinking like when I was kind of doing the research, and I went through this too, and I feel like I've somewhat solved it for myself. So I want to get your feedback here on if, and I think you mentioned a few of the things here. So the first thing I have done is for certain exercises, I've decreased the volume, and I found that that is like reduced things like bicep tendonitis, etc. I've increased the rep range, but I think the hardest part of increasing the rep range is keeping that intensity at the same level, right? So if you're doing a set of 5, it's really easy for you to know that you don't have one more in the tank. But if you're doing 15, I feel like pushing yourself to failure on 15 is a different skill set than pushing yourself to failure on 5. So I feel like it took me a couple of years to kind of learn what failure feels like on certain movement patterns in a higher rep range. So I feel like I had that same thought, like I do better in a lower rep range, but I feel like it was more that I hadn't developed that skill on really pushing myself at a higher rep range. I think exercise selection makes a big difference.
Yes.
Picking the right movements, using machines. And I know it might not be as exciting, but I think you get used to it if you're seeing gains there. And then the last thing I wanted to mention for you is I think you keep a very narrow bulking window from what I've seen. Like you stay lean, and then at the end of your bulk, typically, like your waist circumference isn't very high. So I actually wonder if your tendency to always staying lean actually made it easier for you to get injured. So I'm just curious your thoughts on maybe
Maybe.
some of those points that I had.
Maybe. I haven't really bulked all the way to looking fat. So I don't know. Possibly, it's
Mhm.
very very possible. Yeah, because I imagine that the lower the calorie surplus you're in, the the less your recovery capacity is probably. So I imagine that maybe you're less able to handle hard training for extended periods of time, and that leads to injuries. Yeah. very possible. But even right now, I'm in a bulk, and I'm doing it. I'm doing a truly tracked long-term bulk for the first time. So I want to gain 10 kilograms over the course of a year, and I am, for the first time ever, I'm really tracking calories as accurately as I was doing when I was cutting.
Yeah.
I've never done this before. Yeah, I was, because I wanted the bulk to be like a break period from the stress of counting calories. I generally only made sure that I was eating enough protein and that I was gaining weight. I was only tracking the weight to see that I was gaining at a good rate. So if you pay attention to those things and you also have pretty good protein distribution, normal meal pattern, then you're doing basically most of the things that you can do. But right now, I really am tracking calories. For the past 3 months, I have 99% accuracy in my calorie range.
Sure.
So very, very on point. And let's see. So far, it's going good.
Yeah, I think just what, again, I'm only speaking from my experience, but what I've kind of realized is like usually when I'm bulking, I'm already thinking about the cut. And I think since I've gotten rid of that mindset where I'm just like, when I'm done the bulk, I can maintain. I just feel I just don't get injured as often as when I was cutting or trying to stay lean. But it could also be those other things, like I'm saying, like less volume, so there's more recovery, and pushing myself with higher reps, even though it's not as fun. It becomes fun. So I feel like you talk about like the plateau when people they get injured and then they lose that momentum. I almost feel like you need to optimize for not losing that momentum. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yes. That's my entire point. Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So I actually want to put up this picture here. You can see this here. So this is from your site here. So I guess you're saying that most of us are kind of in this no man's land, and you either need to stay at that similar body fat but increase muscle mass or get leaner.
Exactly.
Okay. And
But
you're sorry, go
I,
ahead.
I want to make the caveat that if the middle physique is your goal physique, totally fine, no problem. But I think that with our current fitness standards, you've got to choose. You're either going lean, so you look impressive because you're shredded, or you go huge, so you're strong, big, you look big in clothes. Either way, if I know that right now, if I was to post that middle picture on Instagram, people would say I don't even lift. They would laugh at me.
Yeah, that's fair. But that's Instagram world. I'm talking about
Yes.
real life and not Instagram world.
Yes.
If you are a influencer posting photos, your best move is just to get as lean as possible and to optimize lighting and angles and take photos, right? Like you were saying, the Hollywood physique, right?
Yes.
That is what portrays the best on Instagram. But for most people, the vast majority of their life isn't on Instagram. But maybe for some people, that's what's important, is getting those Instagram or those Tinder pictures that are like optimized or whatever. So I did actually want to move on here to the Greek god physique standard. So this is something that you always talked about, right? Like you need to get your waist in a certain range and you need to do well on the key lifts. So I actually wanted to get your feedback and this is something we just talked about, like how can you figure out what the standard should be if you don't choose these as your long-term exercises to progress for a variety of reasons, right? So like maybe instead of the weighted chin up, you're doing the lat pull down. Maybe instead of incline bench press, you're doing dips. Maybe you decide you don't want to do shoulder press. So like, is there a framework you think people can use or think through if they're not using these 4 exercises? Because this is great at some point, but at some point you may want to change what you're working on.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I need to give credit to Grego Gallagher from Kino Body, because this is his idea. So he was the first one to suggest that, hey, if you want to reach a certain physique, maybe focus on hitting certain strength standards and a certain body fat percentage, because there's a high likelihood that if you do that, you will look a certain way. So big credit to Greg on this. Now, I think that, of course, strength transfers reasonably well between exercises, and I don't know how, most strength standards are set only for free weights, because I imagine those were the only ones where people have really made the effort to do them. But if you do different exercises, maybe perhaps you can, for one workout, see how strong you are on the free weight movements, and then um, add some more theoretical weight to account for the fact that you're not used to them. So maybe if you're doing lat pull down and you're switching to weighted chin ups, and you see that you're not quite at those standards, I guess you could assume that if you were to train that movement for 2 months, it would probably improve by at least 10% in terms of strength or something like that. So I think you can. These are just to give you a general idea of how strong you should be.
And are you still doing these exercises?
I'm doing uh, from those four. I'm only doing the biceps curls right now,
Okay.
and the other ones I'm doing different variations. Yeah.
Okay. So, but you kind of, I guess, have a gauge of where you should be and just trying to improve there, as opposed
Exactly.
to having like this is the goal for this. Like, this is a nice, simple way for people to understand like where they should go if they don't know where they should go.
Exactly. Yeah, and look, as an example, I filmed some more videos in the gym this November, because I needed some new footage, and of course, free weights look best on camera. So I did free weights exercises after not doing them for months. For most of this year I've trained with machines or in a higher rep range, and when I returned to a lower rep range on these exercises, my strength was pretty much at the same level as it was before. So I could do weighted chin-ups easily with 20 kilograms attached to the belt. I could do heavy dumbbell incline bench press. So once you have a foundation of muscle and strength, you can probably return to these exercises and test your strength standards, even though you're not doing these exercises consistently. Of course, this assuming that you are proficient in terms of technique, so you don't get injured right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason. Like, I wouldn't do incline bench press because it gives me shoulder pain. So I've just moved that to doing more dips or dip machine or pec deck and just other exercises, because I don't want to hurt myself. That's probably the primary, right? Because if you're hurt and you're always feeling nagging injuries, then you're not going to improve. You're not going to give your full effort in the gym, and that's why I think these are great starting points. But you also have to understand, as you get more advanced, like what works for you and what doesn't.
Yes, totally agree.
But I guess there is one thing here. Like, how important do you think this waist measurement is? Because I think a lot of the people listening, when they get lean, they don't get this lean. I feel like that there's a gap there in terms of what they think is lean, as opposed to like what's actually going to get them lean, like 42, 43% waist to height. I feel like more people, if they want to get lean, there's probably an extra 10 plus pounds that they're not realizing that they need to lose to get to this requirement. Do you agree on that?
Yes, and by the way, I think this is a very old video.
Yeah, it's like 10 years old.
Yeah, I no longer agree with that the waist measurement is a reliable indicator of body fat percentage.
Okay.
This is something I believed back then.
Yeah.
For many years, I've no longer used or recommended this metric. I have found that a much more reliable metric is actually body weight compared to height in centimeters. So in my own personal experience, and from what I've seen of people applying Shred Smart or other people that I interact with online that follow my content, is that intermediate lifters generally are lean to the point where they look great when their body weight in kilograms is between 105 and 110. So their height in centimeters minus 105 to 110 gives you a number, and that is the kilograms. Does that make sense? So, for example, if I am,
All right,
I
I'm let's say I'm 5'10", 177 minus 105, 72. So I don't live in kilograms. Even though I live in Canada, everything is kilograms except pounds.
okay,
Yeah, that seems about right. I'm in that range-ish. I'm a little bit above it, but I'm not as lean as I could be right now.
yes, and so generally, when your kilograms, when your body weight in kilograms is equal to your height in centimeters minus 100, and you're lean, that generally indicates that you have a high level of muscle development. So, for example, if you are 180 centimeters tall and your body weight when you're lean is 80 kilograms, you're doing great. You have a lot of muscle mass. You're close to your potential. And for intermediate lifters, they generally have to go lower. So if your height in centimeters is 180 and you are an intermediate lifter, you'll probably be lean and look shredded when you weigh between 70 and 75 kilograms. So between 105 and 110 below your height in centimeters. This is what I found to be a much more reliable formula.
Okay. I still think the waist measurement is a good guide, at least.
Yeah, but you know what the problem is? People vary genetically in
For
terms of
sure.
body proportions. So, for example, in my case, when I am very lean, when I'm, say, I don't know, maybe 20%, 12% body fat, my waist is actually maybe 41% of my height because my bone structure is very narrow. So I'm myself an outlier. I don't fit that range. I have other friends that have naturally a wide waist, so they
There's
will, yeah.
there's so much variation in everything. Like I've gotten a DEXA scan before, and I'm on the low end of bone density. My bones don't weigh a lot, so I'm going to weigh less in general because of lack of bone density. That's nothing to do with muscle or anything. It's just my bones don't weigh as much. That's genetic. Nothing I'm doing about
How
that.
much is that? Because as far as I know, bones are quite light.
I have no idea. I don't know if it's a lot or not. I don't know. I'm not the
Yeah.
I'm not the bone expert here, but that's what I was told. That
Yeah,
yeah, but
I,
maybe
I
it's like
would
a pound.
imagine
Maybe it's a pound or two. Maybe it's not a
yeah,
big
it's
deal.
something like that.
Cool. All right. No, that makes sense. But something I even hear some YouTubers and people in the community say is like, I have a really big waist, but then I notice that they haven't actually pushed themselves to get lean. So I feel like their bottom end is like that 15%, 14, 15%. So they don't actually know what they would look like if they got down to 10 or 11%. So I think some people also, because they like to stay bigger or fluffier for whatever reasons, being strong, build more muscle, they may not actually realize what they'll actually look like and what their waist may slim down to if they got, quite lean.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I noticed that there is a big genetic variability in terms of body fat distribution, in terms of where you store it.
Yeah.
In my family, I've noticed that we are lucky, let's say, that if I get to higher body fat percentage, I store fat everywhere. My face gets rounder. My arms get much bigger. I store fat pretty evenly, and I think this is why I tend to get a very slim waist, even when I'm in say a relatively low body fat range. But for some people, they store a lot of their fat maybe on their stomach.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a 10-pound window that even if I bulk slowly, I go from like 81 centimeters to like 88 centimeters.
Yeah.
So it's like that 10 pounds is always like, okay, we're going through it, right? Like but it is what it is. Yeah. So there is some definitely body fat distribution. Okay. I'm going to throw out a couple of topics. Tell me if you think it's underrated or overrated.
Okay.
The first one is an exercise. Do you think doing overhead shoulder work is underrated or overrated?
I would say it's properly rated. I would say it's
You can say that. Okay.
yeah. I would say it's in between because it does have its merits. I know that now there seems the evidence seems to point out that it may not be necessary because you get very good activation even when you're doing horizontal presses in terms of your front delts.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think there is some benefit to doing some overhead presses. My opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's an interesting one because on the evidence side, there everyone wants to optimize everything except the anterior delt, which is like, oh, you get enough, but no one says that for like your tricep or anything else. It's
Mm.
always like I feel like that's one of those tribalism things that's occurred where everyone's saying you don't need to isolate the anterior delt, and I feel like 15 years from now, people will be like, why weren't we isolating the
Oh,
anterior delta? Why weren't we focused on it more?
switch, huh?
Yeah, I think it'll be
Yeah.
one of those things. All right, next one here. Single serving desserts.
Single serving desserts. I think those are underrated.
Why?
I think it psychologically it helps a lot when the portion is decided for you. Yeah, I think this is it. If you're cutting and you're eating ice cream and you get a big bucket, you're in trouble. Much better to get something that's packaged individually because psychologically, when you're done, uh, you're less likely to open another package.
I completely agree. So I think for desserts or even chips, stuff like that, if it's in the house, single serving makes such a big difference because you can make that decision to have that, drumstick or ice cream or whatever it is, and it's 300 calories. And then when you're done, you have to make a conscious decision if you want to have another 300 calories, as
Exactly.
opposed to I'm watching TV, and now I'm 1,000 calories in, or I had a bowl and I haven't met. I feel like this is actually one of those things that makes a huge difference for adherence because you can enjoy foods you like with being less likely to binge it, right? So if you have like a small bag of chips, it's 150 calories. You're unlikely to eat 6 of those in a row. Like it's happened, but it's harder to go back 6 times to your cabinet and get them than to just finish one large bag of chips, even though the one large bag of chips costs less money. So it seems like it's better value. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the trick is. Like people get the big bag because it's a better deal. But if you're going to eat that in one serving, it's not serving you at all.
Exactly. Yes, I totally agree with this.
Okay. And the last one here is high protein intake.
High protein intake. I would say it's overrated.
Okay. Why?
Yeah, my personal opinion. I think that most guys going to the gym would do very well on between 120 and 140 grams of protein per day forever.
Yep.
And going to 200 maybe feels good. Maybe it gives you that psychological safety net that you're not missing out on gains. But in practice, it probably makes a very small difference. And also, you know what my values are. I think that it's very hard to eat a high protein diet without eating animals and animal products. And I think that there's value in lowering your protein intake even for that. It makes it much easier to eat mostly plants. So, in my view, I say, hey, don't go for 200 grams of protein per day. Go to 130.
Yeah, fair enough. I eat a lot of meat, so we're probably not on the same page there. I don't optimize for ethical reasons, unfortunately, but with my conversations with some other people, it seems like high protein does have advantages in specific situations, like for body recomp. The data shows there. I think the big challenge is around making your diet structure enjoyable. If it's over the top protein, then you're reducing the amount of carbs that you
Yes.
eat. And I find it just harder to adhere to an insane amount of protein. So I end up just naturally eating like 150 grams of protein, just
Yes,
by eating
exactly.
with all my thing. But then I still have room for like bread and potatoes and rice and whatever else I want to eat, like frozen food, etc. Like it fits in a little bit better than if I was really optimizing for protein, but then I feel like the enjoyment and adherence would be lower. So I think
Yes.
there's a piece there as well.
And I want to qualify this a little bit. So I'm not saying that high protein isn't superior to lower or medium protein. Honestly, if I was asked to create an ideal
Yeah.
meal plan for a bodybuilder, I would probably put a lot of protein just to make sure, because there is data that does show there's a benefit there. However, I say that in the real world, for the average guy, it's overrated, and you wouldn't even notice a difference if you decreased it by a few tens of grams.
Yep. All right. Now I'm going to throw out some quotes you've said in the past. Tell me your first thought or take on it. All right. The
Okay.
first one is, when in a calorie deficit, I notice reduced hunger and cravings when I save calories for the second part of the day. I find it physiologically easier to consume more of my calories in the evening. This has been the experience of my clients as well. Consider these two scenarios. It's 5 p.m. and you have 300 calories left, or it's 5 p.m. and you have 900 calories left.
Yes, I still totally agree with it. I think this is the calorie distribution throughout the day is something that most people make a huge mistake in not paying attention to when they're cutting, because you have to figure out how your preferences and how your body does best, in terms of how you eat. Because yes, what matters most is the total amount of calories that you eat in a day, but the way you distribute those calories can make it very easy or extremely hard to actually stick to those numbers consistently. And psychologically, it seems to me that if you know that you still have a lot of calories left in that day for you to eat, you get less stressed. You don't feel deprived, because hey, I get to eat more later. I get to eat more later. But if it's the middle of the day and you barely have any calories left, that can be extremely stressful, because you say, hey, what if I get hungry later and I won't be able to eat because I've already reached my calorie limit? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a nightmare scenario, honestly, especially if you have to endure this every day for weeks or months for the duration of your cut.
I don't think it's even just for a cut. So I have a pretty large appetite. So that's my experience when I'm maintaining too. If I
Oh,
eat way too much earlier in the day, I don't have a ton of calories left at night, and that can be somewhat stressful. So I don't fast specifically because I trade in the morning and I like to eat before it, but I do have kind of a diet structure where some smaller meals in the day, take a break, large meal, snack, whatever. But I do feel like I don't know, I feel like I'm more disciplined in the morning too than at nighttime.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably because when you're more rested, you have more self-control, more willpower. So it makes sense to um, do the hard things in the morning, like abstaining from eating more.
Yeah, I never wake up in the morning and be like, hey, the first thing I want to do is like eat cake and a bag of chips. Like that doesn't
Yeah,
come up. But at nighttime, like that can pop up, right? So I think
exactly.
optimizing for those tendencies makes sense as well. All right, next one here. Um, in order to be successful, there are two battles. One battle with the outside world, and the second battle is with yourself. A lot of people think of the battle with the outside world as the hard part, but I think the real battle with yourself is it.
Yes, this isn't something that I came up with. I think it's a quote by Tim Urban, I think,
Okay.
from Wait But Why. And yeah, I totally agree. Because if you learn to control yourself, then you're much more likely to be successful in whatever circumstances you're put in, meaning the external world. Um, of course, the external world can be very harsh on you, and I'm not one of those people that believes in the 100% self-made man. I think that's a myth. We are a huge, we are the product of our environment to a very big extent, and also our uh, genes and every other influence that is on us. However, um, if you learn to have good habits and to control yourself, then of course you are much more likely to succeed in whatever circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we all kind of get out of control and just need that reset to be like, I need to like get myself in check here, and because the outside world can influence you,
Yeah,
can
and
influence us all, right?
the thing is that I view disciplines as confidence builders. If you manage to stick to the little things that are in your immediate control, then you gain confidence that you can stick to more difficult, higher disciplines. For example, something that I did in the last 3 months is I finally fixed my sleep.
Okay.
Finally, I'm going to bed early and I'm waking up very early, and it's great. You know, I've been doing this for about 100 days now, and even that small change
Yeah.
creates a big psychological effect in that you believe in yourself more, that you can stick to something that you have promised yourself to do. And if you add a few more things on top of that, and you build a collection of small daily disciplines, those can have a transformative effect in your life.
Yeah, so this might be a little nerdy, but there's like the minimal effective dose for hypertrophy. I was kind of thinking like, what's my minimal effective personal development? Because there's so many different things you can do. So I just have like a 2-minute morning routine and a 2-minute night routine. And if I do that, I check it off, and everything else is a bonus. Because if you start stacking all these disciplines, like I need to meditate today, I need to do this, I need to do this, then every day again starts feeling anxious because there's so much you need to
Mhm.
do. So I figured out what's the minimal effective personal development that I need to keep my momentum going,
Yes, very good idea.
right? I should write a paper on it. PhD for him. Yeah.
Do it.
All right. Next one is a funny one. So tell me the story behind here, okay? I
Okay.
got into personal development and books because one night I was at the club and it got so bad. I was just there sharking. I would stand there with my beer and never approach a girl.
Wow, I have even forgotten about this. You dig deep, Varun, when you do your research. Yeah, so I remember I was in high school, maybe in the 10th grade, ninth grade, something
Yeah.
like that. Maybe the 10th grade. And I was in the club, yeah, here in Romania. Back then we had very, let's say, lax security at clubs. half the audience was underage high school kids. But anyway, yeah. So of course, when you're in high school, you want to be cool, you want to fit in, you want to approach girls, and I wanted to do that, but I lacked the self confidence. I lacked the. I was never that. I was always more of the nerdy kid, and I wasn't. I never felt cool and
Mm.
very very good at social interactions. So that night I basically just stood around, like you said, with the beer and didn't do anything. And I then got the idea, hey, couldn't I learn how to do this? And I went home, I searched on the internet. This was maybe 2010, something like that. The dating industry was just getting started. Lots of ebooks. You know, I found a bunch on the internet, and I started reading. And what was what was the reason I say that had a huge impact on me is because I applied some of the things that I was reading there, and I got results in real life. So I have realized that by learning you can improve yourself, and that was a light bulb moment for me, because it was just a matter of changing the things that I was reading to solve other problems. I
Hmm.
learn other things, other skills, and I never stopped. Even now, years later, I'm self-taught in basically everything I know, from video editing to doing research to fitness to all the other topics that I have um, covered. And it was just learning how to search for the right information online.
I get it, man. I think we all been there. I would say I was probably I was probably decently cool in high school, if that makes sense. Like I hung out with everyone. Like I played nerdy games and stuff, but like I was invited to all the parties and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It
later
was
on I
just-
was too. So
huh?
later on I was too.
Yeah, but the same thing, right? Like there's confidence, scared to make a move like that. I think that's a pretty normal thing for most guys at that age, where you're just like the fear of rejection is more scary than anything
Yeah,
else, right? Like, oh, this person's my friend. What if they're not my friend? If this is going to get awkward, right? Or at a bar, it's like just easier to not approach.
exactly.
Like, I'll just drink more here. All right. Fun question for you here now. Not about your sharking days, but so what is your Mount Rushmore, your personal 4 favorite upper body lifts and why?
Upper body lifts. My main one is the weighted chin up. Probably number one would be because I'm good at it. I think I'm genetically gifted for it.
So am I.
I have always been strong on it. I've never got injured because of it, so that's a huge plus. And I've always felt good doing it. Let's see. Uh, I really like the overhead press.
Okay.
I haven't done it in a while because of a shoulder nagging pain, but when I was doing it consistently, absolutely loving it. Um, I like an exercise that I call the Radu row.
Okay.
It's a modified um, uh, bent over row for the real delts where you do it with a single dumbbell.
Okay.
Um, and I like the incline bench press.
Okay. So it is some of the OG ones that you were doing a long time ago. Those are still
Yeah.
top ones. Have you ever tested your like your you have a max like a PR for chin ups, like how much you've
I
added?
think I my max was 1 rep with uh 50 kilograms, I think.
What's that? You know, kilograms. 50 kg in pounds. I did 1 rep with 3 plates. What's that? 135. You did 110. So around the same. I
Yeah.
think I did a bit more there, but it was for one. So
Yeah, just for one.
it was
Yeah.
just for one. Yeah. So definitely not for 5 or anything like that. Okay. That makes sense. So, you were on YouTube quite a long time ago. So I'd love to know maybe just 2 things, like who were your early inspirations and then what fitness channels do you follow now?
My early inspiration was Gregor Gallagher from Kinobody. He was the one that inspired me to do this entire thing. I actually worked with him for a while in the beginning, and it was great. So he was. If I hadn't stumbled upon his early content, I wouldn't probably be doing what I'm doing. And over the years, my main influences have shifted to the big evidence-based guys. Guys like Eric Helms, like Greg Knuckles, Jeff Nippard. Those are the big ones. And nowadays, I don't actually for the past maybe 4 years, I don't really consume much fitness content at all. I prefer to consume. I'm referring here to videos. I listen to podcasts. I read some of the latest stuff. If something big comes along, it reaches you even if you're not actively looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I'm at. I think I'm at the point where I know most of the fundamentals and most of the big pieces, and I don't see a value in continuously consuming fitness content uh, just for the sake of it, if it makes sense.
Well, do you feel that it affects your motivation and your ability to progress if you're immersed in the content or not? Like, I feel like there's something there that, like, when you're super into something and you're following it and you're watching the videos, like, it helps with motivation. And do you feel that, or do you feel that there's nothing's lacking by
No,
having it more passive?
yeah, it's not that. It's the fact that I'm not really that interested in it anymore to consume it so much. I've branched out into many other interests, and I feel like my fitness is mostly taken care of. And whenever when I have time to consume content, I generally prefer, for example, I generally prefer to listen to a Mindscape podcast by Sean Carroll instead of a fitness content most days. Instead of a fitness podcast, or I much rather watch a documentary on another subject instead of watching an hour of YouTube videos.
Okay. So it's just that it's become more of a passive hobby, if that makes sense. Or just as other things have bubbled up.
It's I wouldn't say that either. It's still a big piece. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm applying uh, I'm applying this bulk with as close to 100% efficiency as I can.
Okay.
I'm tracking calories very closely. I'm paying attention to my meals. I'm not skipping workouts. I'm pushing to failure, very high effort. So in terms of applying
You're doing it
fitness,
all.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
leading
doing
it.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So you're
but I'm not. I guess I'm not really inspired by seeing, I don't know, very big guys or watching them train, because I find it boring, I guess, to a large extent. I really like the nerdy stuff. I like listening to long form conversations like what you have with some experts on your podcast, where they discuss um, some of the finer details, and I like to think and nerd on those concepts.
Mhm.
But most fitness content, I think, is not for me anymore. I
Yeah,
just
that's
get
fair.
bored by it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think most fitness content. I'm sure I only watch 3% of the fitness content out there, and most people I've unsubscribed to as well, because I don't want to watch content for pure entertainment. I like
Mhm.
like some entertainment's good, but I need some like education in there as well for it to be worthwhile. Okay. So I do want to move topics. So this is something we talked about last time, and I've been thinking about it. And it's kind of regarding your change in stance regarding the subconscious mind. So you
Mhm.
used to make content around things like paradigm shifts, but more recently you said you kind of no longer believe in this, as you don't think the data and evidence show this to be true. So I actually wonder, from a goal attainment and fulfillment standpoint, which one has served you better? The past, when you were really focused on this subconscious mind, paradigm shifts, etc., or your more recent, uh, evidence-based mentality?
This is an excellent question, Varun. Very, very well thought out. Yes, the old mindset was better in terms of achievement, motivation, and drive. I really do believe that in life, delusion is sometimes preferable to truth for certain things. For example, achieving some goals. I really do believe that delusion sometimes give humans power, and unfortunately, I don't want to believe delusion. So whenever I stumble on what I believe to be true, I have to switch to it, even if that ends up reducing my results or my life satisfaction. And I really, in my opinion, I am less happy and less excited about life since I've learned a lot of things than I was when I was younger and more ignorant.
Yeah, I think
Now,
that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back. If I was given the choice, I wouldn't go back. But it is an annoying trade-off.
So I also wonder sometimes if the evidence tells the whole story.
Mhm.
So I feel sometimes we get this evidence and it can break old thoughts that we have, but the evidence isn't telling the full story. So I still think that, let me give you an example, right? So we talk about like the subconscious mind, and then there's data showing like, okay, this stuff might not work there. But then I have a conversation with Eric Trexler, and him and Greg Nuckols have a podcast on goal setting. And a lot of the stuff with goal hierarchies and neuroplasticity actually align with these things. So I feel like even if it's a placebo, don't let yourself break that placebo too quickly, because a lot of the times, like, evidence is just current evidence that doesn't tell the whole story. So I feel like it feels like you had a belief and you now believe that belief is completely substantiated, that it no longer is accurate. And I am saying I think you should question that.
I think it's something else. I think that sometimes you can be doing something that works and believing it works for the wrong reasons, and you are confusing the cause with the method. And to give you an analogy from fitness, someone could be, let's say they have a rule to not eat after 6 p.m. and they maintain their weight. And they do this for years and they maintain their weight. They're not getting fat. But at some point, they learn that it's actually all about calories, and they stop this discipline and they start eating in the evening, and then they suddenly get fat. Now, of course, they did not get fat because they started eating in the evening. They got fat because they started eating more calories. But when they were thinking that the cause that was preventing them from gaining weight was not eating in the evening, they were applying the cause more consistently. So I think even with this, subconscious mind stuff, if you believe that the goals that you envision are picked up by some infinite intelligence and applied in your life through the law of attraction or some other mystical forces, let's say, that can give you a huge motivation and drive to succeed. But the reason you are succeeding is because you're working. It's because you are applying your skills and you are chasing your goals with confidence and ability. So if you can do those things while leaving behind an ideology that is probably false, I do think that's progress.
Yeah, so I think my point of view is that you need to have confidence and belief in whatever you're doing, and you should figure out whatever tools can help you develop confidence and belief so that you work hard towards the goal. Is it something mystical? I don't really care. I don't think that matters. But I also think that there are things that don't quite make sense, even in the tech world. So like recently, Google announced their latest quantum chip. And in their blog post, it says that it confirms that math can be done in multiple dimensions. So there are some things, like, just look it up. So there's just some stuff out there that I think there is an advantage in also knowing that we don't know everything.
I mean, couldn't argue with that, for sure. It's just that even the idea of subconscious is not recognized in research. I was surprised by this. I was talking about this stuff for years, but I was so uneducated, I never looked it up. On the Wikipedia page, if you write subconscious mind, you only get the woo-woo stuff, because apparently the let's say science-based term is the unconscious mind. So the subconscious is something,
sure,
just, so it's just, I think it's a concept people use in order to make use of a certain ideology, I think. And like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of confidence from applying this mentality. But at some point I had to move on.
That's fair. I think there are certain things, like if you look into something like mental contrasting, just look into that. There's a lot of data and evidence on it, and it kind of aligns with the stuff. But the people talking about things like subconscious mind, etc., they're salespeople, right? Realistically. So you just have to assume, like, I believe incentive drives behavior, right? So a lot of people will package things nicely to get emotion from you so they can sell you something. It might even just be a book, might be their courses, could be anything. But I am a pretty firm believer that science and evidence, although are useful, are not close to telling the whole picture of everything. And it's always evolving. And I think there's a lot of people who feel that the current state of science and evidence is what we should base all of our decisions on. It sounds like you feel that way even from a training perspective, right? Like that is where you lean into more, like the current state of evidence.
I think that science is the best tool that we have, and of course, it's always evolving, and a lot of things will be that we thought were true will be invalidated. And I think it's best to make decisions based on what is currently believed to be the most accurate data. And in time, if it changes, then it changes. But I do not agree with people that say science shouldn't be trusted because it doesn't tell us the whole story right away, right now. And even if it will never answer some questions, I don't want to make the leap from saying science doesn't understand this, so this other thing could be true. I would much rather say, hey, we don't understand this thing and might never will, but I'm not going to make speculations about it or say that I understand it. For example, I took a year and I researched consciousness. I wanted to understand this, especially which animals and life forms are conscious, so I can understand the vegan argument. So I did that, and I read all the major guys, all the major theories, and yes, science currently cannot answer what consciousness is, or doesn't even provide us the framework for us to think well about it, about what it means. However, I'm not going to take that and say that panpsychism is true, which says that consciousness is everywhere. There are different forms, but some people say, hey, consciousness cannot arise out of anything. It must be built from the ground up. Therefore, the fundamental particles are conscious, and the consciousness builds up like that. Look, it sounds all right, but we have no evidence to believe that it's true. And I at the same time, I can accept that consciousness doesn't currently fit well into the physical world as we understand it, but I'm not going to make any leap from that into a different philosophy that has even way much less.
It also has nothing proven. Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's an interesting topic in terms of people put faith in different things. And I feel that science, although is a great tool, it's a tool. And I think some people will put all their faith into the current state of evidence. And I question that.
Really?
Yeah. So I think we're probably on we can just agree to kind of disagree on this. I think it's an interesting point here. Because even with training, like if you're saying the state of evidence on training, I think we know it doesn't cover most things. So you could choose to only do what the evidence says, or you could choose to do that and whatever else has feel. But I think I also lean into the concept of like most things are not just science, it's an art and a science, if that makes sense. Like that's been my experience with business. Like if I just read PhD papers on how to be an entrepreneur, I don't think I'd be a good entrepreneur.
Of course.
So I feel like there's more to it, but that could just also be my worldview, my placebo, my bias. You know what I mean?
I should qualify it. I think science is not the only source of evidence. I think there's a difference between being evidence-based and science-based in a way.
Okay.
Because evidence is just being evidence-based, and I do really think that everyone should live an evidence-based lifestyle, is that what you're actually demanding is evidence in order to believe whatever. And of course, there's a hierarchy of evidence, and science helps provide those most reliable steps.
Yeah.
But you can have evidence in your life. You know, if you do something in the gym and you get great results from that,
Yeah.
you already have evidence that it works for you.
Without knowing
And
the mechanism. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, and you can make decisions based on that. Um, and you're not going to wait for science to test that specific thing, because you already have, in your life, a personal experience. But I do believe that you do have to adopt the mindset that your own personal experience could be reinterpreted through different data. For example, let's say some people were questioning that COVID was real because they never got it, let's say. Well, if science comes along and they show you that, hey, it was real, I think that you should get to a point where you say, hey, yeah, my personal experience was that I didn't this didn't seem to exist in my own life, but I do accept this other mountain of evidence that suggests that it was real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't know if I want to go down the COVID
Okay.
example there. There's too much there, and I'm just going to choose to not talk about that topic. But
Yes, yes,
um, because there's obviously ranging degrees there. So, anyways, I
yeah,
think that is what it is. I just wanted to have that conversation there because it seemed like your you had amazing momentum when you had a different worldview, and
yes,
I just thought that was something interesting to highlight. And it sounds like you were just, I guess, in reflecting on that, it was more about that you cared about something and you worked really hard. That is that how you look at it?
yes,
Okay. And then
yes.
I'm curious, like then you kind of moved into like sustainable energy and kind of the environment. Um, what do you think you could have done maybe differently there to get similar results to what you got in fitness? Have you thought through that?
Um, I really do believe that for myself, quality has been my downfall. I think that
I think so
over
too.
the years, I have become much better at what I'm doing in every way possible. In terms of research, explanations, editing, everything is much better. But the output is lower. And I think that the trade-off isn't favorable to achieving financial success and even um, uh, popularity on the internet, because you have to have a steady stream of content coming out. And I think this has been my primary mistake, and one that I'm not willing to stop making because I still put way too much work into my content, to the point where the diminish you lose a lot more results for the marginal increase in quality. But at this point, honestly, I'm doing content for myself.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
yeah.
just I was thinking about it. I'm sorry if I went so deep in analyzing you here, but I was just thinking through. It seemed like when you were making fitness content, it was really exciting because we saw your journey as
Mhm.
a lifter and we kept seeing it in pieces and you were learning on the go and we were seeing you learn on the go and then give us that information. And as a viewer, I'm like, this is awesome. But it seems like when you went the sustainable energy, instead of doing that approach where we saw that you were learning and you were giving that information, you felt like you had to become the subject matter expert on everything and
Yeah.
release this giant documentary. And there's like, I don't know if it's real or not, but they say something like, okay, if you ask someone to make one painting in a semester and it's the best it could be, or you make 100 paintings, the person who does 100 might be better. Like maybe if you had taken that same approach where you kind of kept showing that you were growing in that space with smaller content, then people who are really interested in that might have joined on. But I could
Yes.
also be totally wrong there. It's tough, right? The content game.
Something switched in my mind when I reached a high subscriber count, because I felt I have much more responsibility to present accurate information. And my anxiety also increased because I had to make sure that I'm presenting accurate information, or at least reliable, and I'm not making major mistakes. And I
Yeah.
realized that in order to do that, I had to spend a lot of time.
It's a big topic too. You don't want to get it wrong, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And I realized even on the way, as I was making it, I was making rookie mistakes that I could only see a year down the road. And I realized that if I was posting that at that time, I would have said maybe some erroneous things. But still, for anyone who is looking for financial results, or even popularity results on the internet, don't do what I do. Don't do what I do. This is the route that I have taken is the route where your work is greatly appreciated by a small number of people, and you get a lot of personal satisfaction in whatever you're doing. But in the eyes of society, you are mostly a loser because you're missing out on,
No, bro. You're not. Don't say shit
you
like
know.
that, man. I don't want to hear nonsense like that on this podcast. No way, man. No. I don't think that. I just think it's more. I think it's more interesting, right? Like as you kind of level up, and you mentioned you have that large subscriber account. Like there's just this larger expectation. But if you had probably just made a new channel, then that it might have actually just reduced the expectation, because you would have had like
Yeah.
10 subscribers watching the first 3 videos.
Actually, no,
And if you messed up,
at this
or
point,
is it more about your
at this
standard?
point, even if I made a new channel, whatever, I'm at that point where whatever I produce must be top notch. And this is
Good though.
not a good mentality to have for just general progress. This perfectionism, but at the same time,
Not a
in
bad
this,
thing though. I think you're treating it like you're an artist or something. Like you want to do your best job or not release.
yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
yeah, I admire people like Christopher Nolan, right? He produces a movie once every 6 years, but when there's a Christopher Nolan movie, you know it's good. You go and see it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
You go watch Interstellar the day it comes out.
Exactly. I couldn't wait for Tenet to come out, for example.
Yeah.
So I hope, my wish would be that my audience would get to the point where they say, wow, there's a new Radu video, it's gonna be good. And if I can get to that point, yeah, for me that's great.
I feel like that's still the case for the fitness content. Like you released that intermediate video, the one we were talking about at the beginning, it got a ton of views. So I think people are still, but I think they're longing for the niche that they joined in for. I think that's the reality of the internet, is that unless you got in so early, you're going to kind of cater to a very specific niche. And it's
Exactly.
very hard to move outside of that niche. And the challenge is that for some people, including myself, it's not 100% of my interest. So I feel like there's a huge challenge there, right? It's like, okay, this is one of my 10 hobbies, but now I have to dedicate all my content towards this hobby because that's what the viewers want. I don't know if you feel that way with your, you must feel it
That's
way
exactly
more,
how I feel.
right? Like
Imagine
that's
that
it.
I spent the last year, listeners, viewers, go right now to raduantonio.com/energy. So my name /energy, and just scroll that page. That was 1 year of work. And I have to tell you that at this point, that is one of the best sources you can find on the internet. And I say that confidently, for you to understand the energy debate and the climate change conversation. And yet, there is very little interest in it. And then this is just the reality. Or maybe I haven't reached those people.
Audience. Yeah.
And of course, it's heartbreaking to work so much on something, to do good work on it,
Hmm.
and for it to not be appreciated. And you know, I I do suffer to this day that I cannot explore all my interests in a way that is financially sustainable and even rewarded. But at the end of the day, I can produce great content in the fitness niche as well. And I realized that for myself, I am a content creator first, and the topic is secondary. I can create, at this point, I'm confident that I can create awesome videos regardless of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think I heard you on a podcast talk about like your switch to sustainable energy, and you didn't feel like the work in the fitness space was making like a large impact on society. And I think you may have discounted that, because for every person that you helped get lean, you they probably improved their self-confidence, and they may have done something special in their lives, and you are kind of part of that net that made them get there. So you have some impact there that you can't see. So sometimes something that seems menial, like getting lean, um, it could change someone's life, and they could change other people's lives in a different way. And you're kind of part of that, if that makes sense.
Of course. You know, I'm always humbled and very grateful when someone tells me that I've had a big impact on their lives, especially regardless, even if it's fitness, even if it's my content with the subconscious mind actually has helped a lot of people. A lot of people have told me that it was transformational for them, and I'm very grateful. So of course, I do know that even if I touch even 100 people with a single video, it's still amazing.
For sure, man. All right, we went real deep there. I'm gonna end today with a funny question. We'll make
Okay.
it way less serious here. So I know that you like games and that you sometimes watch people play StarCraft. So what is
Yeah.
the best race? Protoss, Zerg, or Terra, and why?
I only watched StarCraft One. Uh,
I played you. Okay, StarCraft 1. Okay.
StarCraft One. I know nothing about StarCraft Two, and StarCraft One I only watch as a spectator. I don't play at all. But I think it's the Korean leagues are amazing.
They're so good.
And my favorite matchup is Terran versus Zerg. And
Terran versus Zerg. Yeah, you got
yeah,
the siege tanks going. You got some
actually, it's
Zerglings
mostly
going.
Marines and medics against
Really?
Brutalisks.
Yeah, see, I don't know the meta. I don't know what people are good at. We used to play StarCraft 2 a lot. Brood Wars,
StarCraft 2, all
gang.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Now there's StarCraft 3, maybe 4. I don't even know anymore. So
I don't think so. I think there's only two. But the now I think StarCraft One is more popular than two. Again, they switched, and
really?
yeah, the StarCraft One tournaments are still considered the best. And yeah, my favorite race is Terran because I just like the mechanics of it and how difficult it is to play for the pros apparently. Uh, and I especially like Terran versus Zerg as a spectator.
Nice. Awesome, dude. Thanks for your time as always. I appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
Thank you, Varun. They can find me at my website, raduantoniu.com, or of course on YouTube, my name, Radu Antoniu. And also, I have a new community. If you want to join, it's on School. Varun is a member since day one. Very much appreciated, Varun. Thank you. And there you can interact with me directly. You can ask for support. I can help you in person to set up training programs, meal plans. You also get access to all my content, including all this unpublished exclusive content that I mentioned. You can find all my work on renewable energy, on consciousness, on veganism, on morality. Everything is there, and it costs just $10 a month, and that's an amazing deal.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. Take care.
Thank you.